all over the country. And what I've seen in the response to this crisis is an incredibly powerful and unified movement. And it's really made me reflect and think about education. I'm aware that I'm in a tremendously privileged position in that I am not one of the people having to make day-to-day decisions about what goes on in schools. And I cannot tell you how many times I've said the words to my husband, I'm glad I'm not a head teacher anymore, since about the beginning of March, actually, when all this started to look like it was going to get really tricky. And one of the things I want to say is thank you to anybody who's had to make these really tricky decisions. Thank you for the work that you've done. And for any of you going out there onto the front line and looking after key worker children, thank you. We do appreciate that. I certainly do. And for those of you who can't do that, but who are staying at home and setting content for children, thank you. It's really made me think. I've watched and I've supported and I've tried to do my best, but I've also seen people really stepping up and putting ideological differences to one side and pedagogical differences to one side and really coming together to say, what do we need to do for our children and our families and how can we make it work? And often in the face of some really poor organisation and planning from other areas. So I take my hat off to you. I am not going to mention school meals. Oh, just did. But we'll leave it there. Enough said, but well done. So it really has made me think and reflect. And it showed me how powerful the sector is. And I've always known, because I've worked in education now for nearly 30 years, I've always known that people who work in education are driven by a strong moral purpose. They do what they do because they want to make a difference to children and their families. But I don't think there's ever been a situation which has illustrated this better. And I think that finally people who perhaps were a bit dismissive of the role of schools in society and the role of nurseries and the role of childminders are coming to realise that you are key workers, and without you, not just education, but lots of other things stop as well. Schools really are the hub and the heart, and nurseries really are the hub and the heart of their communities. And that's really come to the fore for me. So I suppose what I wanted to do this afternoon was reflect on that and to think about how do we harness that, what has been a really terrible situation, and say, let's turn this into something positive. How do we harness that really unified feeling and use that to go forward and shape education? So I'm going to keep it short and sweet, and I'm going to pose a few questions, and I'd really welcome your thoughts, and I'd like to respond to those on Twitter. I suppose one of the things I want to think about is, do we have to worry about falling behind? I have a very particular view on that, which is that we've all pressed the pause button, and so who are we worrying about being behind? What do we need to think about when we do finally think about transitioning back to school? And I'm not just talking about the logistics of the how, but also things like well-being, managing trauma, supporting people to deal with what has been a really unique and traumatic situation. And how do we manage for our youngest children to explain that the thing that they couldn't see that we told them they needed to be frightened of, they now no longer need to be frightened of, but they still can't see it. And so there's some things to unpick there. And I think, really, what do we take from this? What do we think about going forward? What's mattered in this situation? And how do we build that into our schools and our nurseries and our settings and our education system so that we come out of this with a better system than we went in? What's made a difference? I have some thoughts on that. And for me, I would just say that, obviously being literate and numerate is hugely important because you've had to wade through huge amounts of paperwork to make this work. But creativity and critical thinking have really come to the fore for me in this situation. Now, the legislation alone is not enough. You have had to think really carefully about the unique situation that you find yourself in and adapt and develop strategies going forward to support your families and schools. And I think it would be really useful to hold on to some of those things and really think about how do we incorporate that going forward into our education system. What I've seen online is that lots of people are responding to lockdown in very creative ways. And I think more than ever, we're seeing that the arts really matter. So maybe that's something to consider. What makes a difference in terms of our education system? Is it the SATs? Will it matter that our children haven't sat the SATs this year? Will it make a difference? Genuine questions. And what do we need to take going forward? And I think that unified approach, And also kindness. Kindness being at the heart of everything that we do. The only way we're going to come out of this better off is that we're all kind to each other. So I think that's something that's fundamental to our future working together, regardless of our ideologies. So I am going to shut up now, and I'd like to explore those questions with you on Twitter. And I'd just like to finish by saying thank you very much. Keep on keeping on, and we really do value what you do. Cheers.